Some years ago in Sacramento, California, I was an associate minister at the church, Christ Unity Church there. I had a colleague, Tom Shepard, who was an academic, and he was a good man. He is a good man. I think he's still alive. But he said unity is culturally Christian, but spiritually unlimited. I always like that definition of this faith tradition, unity. Culturally Christian, but spiritually unlimited. And the founders back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, there wasn't for them and with them, there wasn't the diversity that we have now. So in this setting, we have an exposure to all types of different faith traditions that are part of a universal truth. That each faith tradition, if they are clear and aligned with the light of consciousness, they will give that consciousness through various cultural forms. And sometimes I almost am feeling cautious about talking about Christianity, because there's so many people in unity that are in recovery from a previous religious tradition. And I've seen it time and time again that when I talk about Christianity, sometimes people just kind of glaze over, check out. But there is a deep and abiding essence within the Christ teachings. So I invite you and us to just be together within that, because we are within the season of the Christ manifestation, the season of Advent. Western Christianity defines Advent as a season observed of expectant waiting and preparation and coming. The coming into manifestation. We may say, well, have you got the Christmas spirit yet during December? What does that mean? Perhaps just a native enthusiasm about people's ability to open and be willing to share and to give of themselves and to love each other in a way that they maybe have withheld during the rest of the year because maybe they didn't feel it was appropriate to reach out and love one another. But I was warmed in my seat just here watching someone come in the back and sit down next to their friend, and their friend hugged and kissed them in warm greeting. That has so much to do with the spirit of this time of year. But it also has something else. Advent. The Latin word adventus is the translation of the Greek word parousia, commonly referred to the second coming of Christ. It's an interesting concept, the second coming of Christ. And in unity, we hold that as an inner process. That the first coming of Christ is when you may pick up a publication like a Daily Word or some inspirational magazine or pamphlet or something. And you may not have been inclined to be in a spiritual focus. And then something triggers inside of you, and you feel a quickening within your heart, and you rededicate yourself perhaps to a knowing or a self-knowing or a forgiveness or an allowing to take place. And the second coming of Christ is that when it, like we were talking about before, the fertile ground of a seed that is planted deep within your own psyche that starts to build and it starts to grow, and you start to let go of previous definitions of yourself and of other people. There's a birth within your own heart center. And somehow you allow yourself to rededicate yourself to your own spiritual path, be it Christian or Hindu, Islam, doesn't matter. If they're clear, they're all part of the universal truth of the one presence and the one power, the one activity of the divine that is here even in this sanctuary in this very moment. It's calling all of us. It is the coming, the advent of the divine into our life experience. So in Christianity, there are three different perspectives of this time of year. First, obviously, is the birth of the Christ child in Bethlehem. The second is the glory at the end of time. And the one that I would like to focus on the most today, because it's the most imminent and the most beneficial to our lives, is that which is in our hearts daily. In our hearts daily. Christianity and the birth of Christ obviously focuses, especially around Christmas, on the birth of Christ in Bethlehem. And at the end of time. So there are these parameters that people that are adherents to Christianity hold as aspects of the container of their faith, of the container of what we're going to focus on here today. The first Sunday in Advent, hope. Hope. Hope is defined as an optimistic state of mind that is based on an expectation of positive outcomes with respect to events and circumstances in one's life or the world at large. And as a verb, its definitions include expect with confidence. Expect with confidence. Expect with confidence. The unity faith tradition always is about an expectation of good, of your good coming to you in your life. That God is absolute good. And that we are essentially good because we have the Spirit of God within us. And so there is this hope. There is this knowing and this expectation of good because of what God is, not as a judge, not as something that is holding you in contempt, but as a presence and a power that is good, absolute good. So no matter where we are on our walk within our spirituality, whether we're holding ourselves back or we're confused on any level, the truth of the matter is that your life is based upon the principle that that which lives within you is good. That is the cause of your very existence, that you are good. And that is, as they say, the good news. So we may say in the unity tradition that our thoughts are so important, that keeping a positive attitude is so important. My response to that is that thoughts are contributive, but they aren't causal. The cause of your life is that you are a spiritual being. You have this divine inheritance within you that you have always been and always will be part of this great good of life. And that is the good news of the season. So I want to talk about somebody around this gift that we have on this Sunday about hope. Tuesday morning I was thinking about hope. I was starting to cultivate ideas around this Sunday talk right now. And I was walking around my neighborhood, and there's a woman, and she always is up very early because she's wanting to beat the recycle trucks. And she goes and looks in everybody's recycle bins for bottles and cans. And she's very resourceful. She has this little Toyota car with a big box on the top. And when she's done, it looks like Santa's sleigh. Because there's just tons of stuff in her car. And whenever I see her, I always say hello, but I've never stopped to say, what's your name? Because she's always so busy. She's about 60 years old, I think, and she's always dressed in very kind of baggy, unkempt clothing. And I don't know what her name is, but I will, for the sake of today, just call her Marla. I like Marla. And when I saw her on Tuesday morning, it was still dark. And I said, hello. And I could tell by her voice that she was very resilient. She didn't seem disturbed or in despair. She was just working really hard to get her quota, whatever that meant. To maybe buy her groceries or to pay for gas. I don't know what she needed to do. But I could tell that she had cultivated a life that was distinct from public opinion, community standards. And on some level, she was probably more free than myself. In terms of just living life on her own terms. And I wanted to ask her, Marla, how is your life in terms of hope? What do you hope for? What has been your story? How have you moved through your life to live as you do in this time right now? Tell me about what you hope for. But I didn't want to intrude. And I didn't want to create any discomfort with her. But I just sent her love. Marla has a way of life on the planet. It may be simply just a lifestyle choice. But you know what? I can see her perhaps going home after a work day, trading in all of her cans and bottles and getting a few dollars, maybe going home and lighting a candle and looking at it and staying in touch with her own life, her own soul, and her own heart. How do we maintain hope in our lives? A lot of the time we invest our life energy in looking good while sometimes feeling despair. We don't want anybody to know. But in my work over the years, in ministry and in social work, I have been so privileged to be with people when they have lost hope. And they have said to me, Bruce, I need to tell you my story so that I can regain hope. And I just need you to listen. I don't need you to fix me or tell me where I've gone wrong. I don't want your judgment. Because they sometimes think that a person in my position is going to judge. It's not my job. My function is to hold space for a higher reality and a higher truth for that person until they can claim it and know it for themselves. Because it's in there. It's already there. It's already the cause of their being. And together we find that truth together. So hope in a way is a fragile thing. It's fragile. It's not really based upon spiritual principle. It's based upon human trust. It's based upon a willingness to stay close to one's being, one's soul, and say, yes, I have an expectation of good, a waiting upon the good, regardless of the appearances of what I'm going through or what is happening in my life. I'm hanging in there to know and to have hope in life. And so in the cultivation of this very, very necessary and very important element of our own being, I drew up something called an acrostic. An acrostic is a word or meaning for each letter within a word. So I wanted to share that with you today, so that it will deepen our relationship with our own hope. When I was developing some meaning around H for hope, I immediately went to healing. But then I wanted to get into something a little bit more provocative. So I used the word holy. Holy. Holy it does mean lots of different things to people. The images of sitting in your backyard on a sunny day and having a hummingbird come and fly near you. Sometimes they get very close, right in front of your face. That can be holy. Or a sparrow. Or just having a meaningful connection with a friend, a holy instant, as the Course in Miracles says. A holy instant of connection, and where our mind-made self is quieted. And we begin to have this holy relationship with ourselves and with another. That can be holy. That's what Advent really is. A holy coming into consciousness when personality judgments are still and something more beautiful happens. Holy. The O in hope. Openness. Are we open? Are we receptive? You know, years ago when I was first studying the unity principles and teachings, there was an affirmation that said, I am now open and receptive to my good. We have to be open and receptive to what it is that is there for us, that is just behind the images and perceptions of our own mind, to be open to the causal aspect of our own being, that when God is revealed, man is healed. A man told me that years and years ago. He said, always trust in God, Bruce. This was probably 40-something years ago. Always trust and have hope in God. He'll never let you down. You may not make a lot of money. Being in ministry. But it doesn't matter. What's really important is working with people to stay grounded in hope and truth. Sometimes we may ask, where is God now? Where is God in this situation? I've almost given up hope. Right there. I wrote, but hope is about staying open to the presence of Spirit when that presence of Spirit appears to be not around. Ever had moments like that? The P in hope. The letter P. Prayer. Prayer sometimes is asking God. And sometimes it's about holding space through affirmation. You know, sometimes on Sundays when the prayer chaplains are at work up here and serving people, they're holding space when others have temporarily forgotten what is true. The E in hope. Energy. Allowing the divine energy to move through us. And it's interesting, when I was developing these ideas for this talk, the 23rd Psalm came to me. This psalm is 3,000 years old. It is a psalm of hope. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and he leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. For even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod, your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There's confidence in this psalm, but there's also a message of hope. Hope is a felt knowing that we are not alone. Is there anybody in this room right now that's dealing with challenges around not having hope? A few little half hands are going up. You know, in my church in Cottonwood, Arizona, the group was quite a bit smaller than this, maybe 100 people. And there was the intimacy that we would have with each other to ask that question and invite people that were in a tough spot to gather in the very center of the room. And we would circle them. And we would be an active force of love for them. To hold space for them. And they would say, you know, I don't know what to do now. I don't know where my life is going. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask us to do that here. But I do remember the power of it. I do remember how wonderful it was then when a lot of people gathered around 4 or 5 other people, and there was a willingness and an openness, and there was a prayer, and it was a holy moment, and hope was restored. People would say, I'm so grateful I came today. I didn't think I was going to, but something told me to come. And there was a blessing that took place for everyone. That's hope in action. That's hope in demonstration. It's helping people get through the tough times, like Catherine Heinel's going to be doing later this week. Instilling hope. One of the founders of the Unity movement, Charles Fillmore, his favorite Bible quote was, Christ in you, the hope of glory. Christ is that essence within each one of us. It is that which restores us. Even if we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, to fear no evil, for thou art with me. He gives us great hope. So the holidays are an interesting time for us, are they not? They're so rich and so beautiful, but also challenging times when we need each other and we need to have this fundamental element in consciousness called hope. And it's always my desire here on Sunday that when we conclude from this room and we're down below sharing for those that do, to share stories. And I invite you to do that today, to share stories about hope, of your own life story, perhaps when you were up against it. Let's create a sacred atmosphere, not one of challenge and despair, but of uplifting stories of hope here today. I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. A message of hope. Thank you.